So how does one really work on it? Because I think a lot of people will navigate towards suffering,
Yeah,
this loss,
yeah,
why am I being tested? Why am I being challenged?
yeah.
And ultimately, how does one cultivate this trust relationship with life itself?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's no easy 3 steps, unfortunately.
I thought you were going to give it to
I'm not much of a step guy.
us.
I'm like, just, fuck around and find out guy.
That's a,
A little bit of evidence and yeah, a little bit of wisdom over the years. That's sort of something that happens as we navigate some of the challenges of life. But it really is, it's so beautiful that you can articulate it that way and to recognize that even though obviously you've had this beautiful relationship with all the things you've created from another human being to all the businesses and the millions of lives that you've impacted, which is incredible. It's almost like life is asking us to recognize our own limited imagination, our own shortcomings, right? It's like, okay, you think that's good, just let me show you something else, right? And it doesn't always have to be preceded by this self-imposed faith and trust. Like sometimes life will just surprise you, like even in the darkest of hours, we're bitter, we're feeling like victims, life is not fair, apathetic, with lethargy and woe is me. Life is extraordinary in the way that even in that space, that it will sometimes just ignite, even with our own resistance. Like, there's a lot of people who would want to say, well, no, this is too good to be true, just so that they can, be self-righteous about their failures or why life isn't fair. But life has a funny way of like just sort of reminding us that we're really beneficiaries. And I think one of my favorite forms of alchemy, because I talk about these two distinct worlds, right, in my work. I'm taking people from what I call this sort of 1.0 mindset that currently exists, where people are just really in a state of survival. They're living through the lens of subconscious limitations that create the fundamental emotion of fear, that give rise to overall suffering, disease, and dysfunction. Sort of they're the main buckets of the human experience right now. And then there's all the myriad of ways that experts try and come up with solutions, or we better our life through whatever means of escape. My work is really revealing what's beneath that, what's on the other side of these constraints. And that reveals freedom from constraint. And then instead of fear, we have an experience of love. And then instead of suffering, we have this sense of joy and possibility. And then instead of disease, we have vitality. Instead of dysfunction, we start to have affinity and intimacy. And so it's an entirely different world. And in that alchemy from one state to the other, ego to soul-based living is the way that I teach people in my work. One of my favorite shifts is from grief to gratitude. Because as I talk, even on the basic story of loss, I was talking to a friend recently who equally had gone through a loss in their mind. And I said, what's the opposite of loss? And they said, well, found. I'm like, well, in the world of duality, they both have to exist. So what did you find through the relationship? And they just burst into tears. And it was so beautiful because they recognized actually the sorrow was really a reflection of what they'd found, because it was so beautiful. So grief is really another form of love. And so when you understand the world of duality, that they have to coexist, you've articulated it in your way, or you've experienced it like, wow, I'm grateful for my father because, okay, 17 years, I've said the same thing. We've probably reiterated it in different ways. I've got friends of mine who've had their father for 70, and he's never once said to them, I love you. And my dad told me every day. So did I, quote unquote, have it bad because I had a father for 17 years? Or did I arguably have one of the greatest fathers that I could ever have had? And so it's a clear answer for me. So that grief that is very human and we can have compassion for it, it's to be expected. The transmutation of that, the metamorphosis of that into an overarching feeling of like, wow, the fact that I even got to experience love, romantic, familial, father, whatever it is something that I feel blessed. Like it really becomes a much more all-encompassing experience of realizing it's just a gift to be alive. It's a gift to be human and to feel. I can remember one of my very early talks, this is now going back a long time, was in a little yoga studio, and I was talking about relationships. And I said, when you really break it down, one of the greatest aspects of being human is that we get to feel. We just get to feel. And yet, the irony, the juxtaposition is that most people are just so scared to feel. Right? And that's why I think like we love watching movies. People vicariously get to experience anger and lust and joy and frustrations through the, celluloid, whoever's acting, who's willing to go there in their own vehicle of self-expression, and it's like, but in life, like just to feel love. I mean, what a beautiful experience, right? And then to feel grief on the other side, to me, is, as I said, it's an extension of love. It's on the continuum. It's just in a different form. I think I even shared in our talk, at the summit, what I realized by looking at a picture of me as a little kid in a onesie, as a black and white, and my mum is standing behind me, kind of ushering me towards whoever's off frame, which was clearly my dad. And I could see the excitement of this little boy, you know, and my dad went to work on the boats, which is how he passed. And he was sometimes gone for a few days. And so this is probably the reunion of me with my dad. And the joy and the excitement to me as I witnessed that was like, wow, there's something beautiful about missing somebody as an expression of love. And so for me, this whole big game, this whole dimension of what it is to be human is the ultimate missing. Because we're missing our own essence. And it's the remembering of our freedom, of our love, of our power, of our creativity, of our worth is the joy. Whilst we've, for the most part, been bamboozled by our inadequacies, our insecurities, our feelings of scarcity, and it's like, oh, wait, no, I'm an expression of the divine. And that's so cool to remember. And one of the greatest ways to access that is falling in love with somebody.